Thank you so much for joining me into the Life Gets Messy Zoom series. I'm so excited to be with you today and grateful for your time and interest in this series. As you may already know, I'm a family law attorney and partner with Fox Rothschild. Having practiced family law for nearly 2 decades, I have had a front row seat into the lives of couples and families who are going through what is most likely one of the most difficult times of their lives. Getting divorced, even in the best of circumstances, is painful, difficult, and sometimes gut-wrenching. Yet once these couples and their families can move forward beyond the arduous divorce process, there is an opportunity for life transformation and happiness. They can tap into strengths and qualities they never knew they had. I have been fortunate enough to have a front row seat and witness some of these transformations firsthand. Many get the chance to begin again and build new, healthier, and happier relationships. Thank you for joining us today for the Life Gets Messy Zoom series. I hope everybody is doing well on this beautiful Monday morning. Welcome to fall officially. You've all adjusted your clocks and we're ready to get this week started. Today we are going to be talking about the virtues of truthfulness, candor, frankness, straightforwardness, and I thought that it would be a perfect topic given where I am. I just completed a almost 2-month long trial. If you tuned in last month to the series, I spoke about, or the last time we did it, because I had to miss last month, I should say, we talked about this trial and how my client and her family got to this point where they were actually having a trial to get divorced, which is frankly very rare. About 5% of divorce matters actually go to trial. So we talked about that. And now that we've completed the trial, in fact, just last week, and we are working on our post-trial submissions, I thought that these virtues were very timely to speak about, not only because of that case, but just in general with my clients, my colleagues and adversaries that I deal with, and just in the world of family dynamics and the uncoupling, I'll call it, of families. So there's a concept that I've recently been reading up about called radical candor, and it's really related to management skills. And there's a great book I'm going to recommend at the end for you all to try to take a look at if you're interested in learning more about it. But in reading about radical candor, I've actually come to the idea of expanding that concept to interpersonal relationships within your own life. I think, and I was raised, that a couple of things are no-brainers. One being that you tell the truth no matter what the consequences are. That with your spouse or your partner, there should always be truthfulness. You shouldn't be hiding things. The foundation of any good relationship is honesty and being able to feel comfortable enough to tell the truth to your partner and to share those things that may be hurtful or embarrassing or painful for you, whatever they may be. And of course, there are layers to that, just like with everything else. But, as a basic premise, we'll talk about these concepts. And certainly when it comes to your children and how you may deal with them and wanting them to be honest global citizens and growing up and valuing truth and honesty and integrity to get them to whatever their goals may be in this life. And then certainly professionally, how we deal with our coworkers, how we advance ourselves professionally based upon integrity and telling the truth. When I was right out of law school, I clerked for a family court judge in the New Jersey Superior Court. And the judge that I clerked for was the presiding judge of the family court. And he had been in the courthouse sitting as a judge for at least 10 years by the time that I was his law clerk. And he said to me, and I'll never forget it because it was like the first week that I was there working for him, and we had some pretty contentious cases that even in that first week came through the courthouse doors and were before him. And I would be sitting in the courtroom with him watching these attorneys come in and argue and advocate on behalf of their clients. And I would be watching the clients and observing human nature and all of that. And one day he got off the bench and we were in his chambers and he said to me, "Your integrity is all you have in this world. And if you come before a judge or you come before an expert or your colleague or adversary and you're just dishonest, then you have no integrity, and that will follow you throughout your career." And I thought, wow, that is so true. And I had always heard that up until this point in time from my own parents and teaching me about, dealing with people and how I watched my parents conduct themselves and, issues that they may have faced personally or professionally. But it resonated seeing this now very early on in the beginning of this clerkship in the actual profession that I had worked so hard and chosen to establish myself in. And now, nearly 16 years later, I can tell you that that is so true. So people view the truth, I have learned, through different lenses. I have seen and been involved with families and cases where one spouse truly believes everything that they're saying. And whether that's a result of narcissism or some sort of other emotional or mental instability, or just that it's a coping mechanism. They have trained themselves in such a way that whatever they're saying, they really are buying into. And to them, it is the truth. And it's very difficult to change that mindset. And then going to the other end of the spectrum, there are people in these family dynamics who know that they're being dishonest and know that they are manipulating words, manipulating their actions, manipulating the system in order to gain a result which they believe will ultimately benefit them. And again, I think that that is touched with some sort of other, personality traits or disorders, if you will, or, mental instability, emotional insecurities, all of those things. And you see it and you almost expect it after you've been practicing in family law for a long enough period of time. You almost expect it from the litigants. Early on, I had worked on a matter. I was an associate and I worked on a matter for the partner that I was working with. And I really liked our client and really wanted to fight for her. And at some point, I stopped questioning the things that she told me. And I didn't do the deeper search. She would say, to give you just a wild example, it rained marshmallows yesterday. And I would say, okay, it rained marshmallows yesterday, and take those facts and kind of format it into whatever we needed, whether it was a letter, whether we were submitting something to the court. I just went blindly on those assertions. And one day, something had been told to me and I related to the partner and we submitted that to the court. And it was without question provable as false from the other side. And I realized at that moment in time that that was my fault, that I needed to question what I was being told by people. And so I think that a good attorney in a family law dynamic, family law setting is going to do that. Of course, you're advocating for your clients, but you have to make sure that you understand the entire scenario and that you're asking the right questions and asking for whatever documentation that you need. If somebody has told you that something's happening or didn't happen, why, who, what, literally all of the very basic inquiries. It's something that a good judge would do. It's something that a good mediator would do. And frankly, it's something that you should be prepared to advance your client's positions to understand and make sure that you have all sides of the story and not just a half truth or just a small piece of it. The other part where this comes into play in a dynamic is, for example, in this trial. So there was testimony that was taken. If you've ever been to a trial, or even if you've seen some of the better portrayed one on television, people are sworn in and they're under oath and they are subject to penalty of perjury. Means if you lie in a court proceeding, you could be penalized. And there's monetary sanctions and there's even, more severe sanctions. And in our case last month, one of the witnesses, in fact, just last week, had testified that he hadn't seen the husband in my matter he hadn't seen or spoken to one of the other witnesses in the matter for months. And, I asked the same question about 3 times. And it was interesting because I think the judge at one point was frustrated. Like, why are you asking the same thing over and over again? You're saying it differently, but it's the same question. But I wanted to make sure that he was certain in his memory of it. And then I marked as an exhibit a Facebook posting that was from right before the trial started in September, where they were together on vacation in San Francisco in a bar, tagged, photos, all of that. And I said, does this change your recollection? And it was like crickets. And it's very rare, I will say, that you have that kind of perfect, I would call, evidence in any kind of a case. There's, people talk about smoking guns. They don't really exist a lot. You can put pieces together to get somebody to make that conclusion. But this was something that was pretty, definitively, proving that this person was dishonest. And that just ruined, I think, that witness's credibility. And I finished with that. My colleague said he had no further questions. And the judge concluded with that witness, but made comments later on about, credibility issues and credibility determinations. And so even in, when we're talking about something as serious as a trial and testifying and, in family law matters, a lot of what ends up in a decision from a judge is credibility-based determinations. They are viewing parties, they are hearing about their lives and intimate details and how people manage their finances and made decisions with regard to big or small financial matters, or with regards to their children and how they're going to raise them and things that they're going to do. And a lot of times there's not a lot of evidence for that. People don't live their lives in, sending documentary emails or text messages to one another saying, recounting conversations and things like that. Spouses don't do that generally, at least while they're in happier moments of their life. And so when you have credibility determinations, being honest is important. The spouse, and I don't know if you've tuned into that last episode, but the spouse in that matter had been terminated from his employment due to issues with regarding truthfulness, I'll call them. There was an internal investigation within his organization, and he was found by multiple investigators and the person who wrote the report for the internal investigation, and then subsequently he had appealed that to the higher resources, and all of them found that he was just simply not credible and that he had issues with telling the truth. And all of that spilled over into this trial, not only with his own testimony, but with the witnesses that he offered on his behalf. So telling the truth, even if you think it's going to hurt you, is so important. And if you're picking an attorney or working with an attorney who is encouraging you to be dishonest, huge red flags for you, even if you feel that it is going to ultimately benefit you or have your agenda met, you have to seriously consider what you are doing. Number one, it's ethically inappropriate for an attorney to advise their client to be dishonest or make a misrepresentation. In fact, there are rules of professional conduct that require reporting when those things do exist, and that also allow for attorneys to fire clients who ask them to be dishonest on their behalf or who are dishonest with them. So one of the things I tell my clients early on is, you have to tell me everything, whether you want to or not. I need to understand everything that's going on so I can best represent you. And there's always good facts and there's bad facts, and we'll figure it out. But if I don't know, I can't help you. And I don't want to be ambushed, nor should you want me to be ambushed while standing in a courtroom at a trial or arguing a motion with something that you knew about, but just simply chose not to tell me because you didn't think that it was a good fact for you. So very important in all of this. And, I became an attorney because it is an honorable profession. I still believe that. I think that that's always been the notion about it. And conducting yourself with integrity and truthfulness is so important. We are dealing with good people who are going through probably one of the worst scenarios. Maybe they are at their worst, but certainly at best is a difficult time for them. And so sometimes you need somebody else to tell you, it's okay to be upset, but we're not going to be dishonest about it. We need to treat this faith head on. If you have a problem, you need to get help. We're going to figure out how we can do that. There are lots of solutions. And I think that people who are in distress and who are just so emotionally bereft or distraught are not always seeing the picture from all angles because they're immersed in it, and that's human nature. So that is what I would talk about today for these virtues of truthfulness, honesty. Oh, hold on. I forgot to put my phone on Do Not Disturb, and that's my funky phone ring that I don't know how to change. Those are the virtues that I would, hope that you would take away today in the context of a family law setting and really just in life general. I mean, I know that the ladies of B.I.G don't really need to know about that. I know that you guys are all pretty well versed in all of the great lessons that I have certainly learned from being a part of this amazing organization, but certainly that you all share with one another. But in the context of this specific setting, a family law matter, a divorce, a separation, a post-separation battle, even a prenuptial agreement, I think that it's just so important to remind ourselves that, we do this with integrity, we divorce with integrity, we separate, we do a conscious uncoupling, and these virtues just cannot be forgotten because they are so important. So at this point, before I give you my other tidbits about good reads for the month, if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer some of them.
So you're muted. If you have a question, you want to unmute, or Brittany, maybe we unmute everyone. I don't know if anyone is in loud background noise, but it might be easier, Brittany, if you unmute them so that they don't have to fiddle with that. So does anyone ever have any questions? My question is, Sandra, it sounds maybe you did well in this trial to represent your client.
So I think so. I would say that I appreciate that the judge had quite a good poker face. So we were on trial for I think 8 full days, and during those days, you did not know what he was thinking, but he was paying attention because every time we would restart, he would say, like last week we talked about this, or if there was an objection raised, he would say, my notes said this. In chambers, he would make comments that would make you think that he was leaning towards one way or towards another way. Initially I had an expert who I wanted to bring in to testify about some pension valuation issues. Pension value, especially when you have public employees, pensions are treated differently than when you have private employees, and their valuation is, it's an interesting, complex subject area. And so he kept, before I had the witness called, he kept saying to me, do you really need this witness? Are we really going to spend half a day having this witness testify? It's going to cost your client a lot of money. And I said, yes, we're going to really have this witness unless we can settle the issue, which we did try. My adversary and I, we got on the phone and made some tough efforts, but ultimately the clients didn't want to change their positions. And for my client, rightfully so, I believe. And after she testified, this witness, and she didn't testify for a whole morning, I think she was on the stand for maybe an hour, he turned to me and he said, well, that was very enlightening. I learned a lot this morning. So he would give little tidbits like that, but I think a good judge doesn't really tell you one way or another, and I'm very respectful of that.
So how does it work in the process? Because I know a lot of this is about process. So you finished the trial, but now you haven't had the judgment? Is that what?
No, so now we have to do post-trial submissions. So we marked about 300 documents in evidence. And so we have to get a list together for the judge to make sure that he has all of the documents that we've marked into evidence so that it becomes part of the official court record. So the judge can rely upon those documents when he makes his decision. And then he's given us 3 weeks to do what are called post-trial submissions, which is a summary of tying in the testimony with the documents, just pointing out, we told you in a pre-trial brief that we were going to be able to prove X. Here's the proof that you heard during testimony, and here's the documents that prove X. And you kind of just wrap it up neatly for them. And then he did promise, and from what I've heard from my colleagues, that he is honest to his word, that we would have a final decision before the December holidays, which is pretty impressive because I have waited months and months for judges to issue their decisions after, especially a lengthy trial. So, you know, he indicated that he would start working on it, and that I kind of had the impression that he had already started working on it, honestly. But
so it's
yeah,
not like what you see on TV, like after you've done, he comes back in and decides. The process
no,
is very long, huh?
it is. And especially when you have, like I said, 300 documents for evidence, that, you know, that's a lot of information. You wouldn't want, I wouldn't think, I certainly wouldn't want somebody just at the end of the day to say, okay, here's my decision, without really thinking about, you know, 8 days of testimony from 4 or 5 different witnesses. I mean, I'd want them to really think about it, because it's going to impact the rest of my life. So.
Right. So does anyone have any questions? You want to unmute? You're still muted, I think.
I went ahead and unmuted, but then there was some background noise.
Okay. Well, so then I'll give you my book recommendations. So I told you about this Radical Candor. So there's actually a book called Radical Candor, and it's written by Kim Scott. It's a bestseller. It was on the top of, I think, a bunch of the bestseller lists, definitely the New York Times bestseller list. And like I said, it really focuses on like radical candor within an organization from like a management perspective, but I did think that it has a lot of valuable lessons that you could parlay into your personal life. So I would definitely check that out. And then hold on, I lost my Post-it, because the name of my second book, I only call it the first half of the name. So I wanted to make sure I had it all written down for you. It's When Things Fall Apart, Heart, like the organ, Heart Advice for Difficult Times. And it's written by a woman named Pema Chodron. And she is an American Buddhist nun who was divorced, and talks about her personal divorce journey and how she became an American Buddhist nun. And I think that it has amazing advice for difficult times. So it's something that I really enjoyed reading it as well. And then an interesting, it's fiction, but it's if you want a light read, kind of light. I don't know that there's any light reads in this topic area. A book written by a New Jersey resident, a woman actually from Millburn. It's called Fleischman's in Trouble. And it is about a divorcing couple. And it is from the perspective of the husband primarily. But then you see the perspective of the wife. And all of the perspectives are really told through a third party. And it's really fascinating. And again, about how everybody lives their own truth, or what they believe their version of the truth is, and how that, if you're looking from the outside, how that comes into play with people. So those are my top reads.
Excellent. One thing that I thought was interesting what you said, and I was thinking about this, is like, it does make the rapport between you and the client so important, right? I mean,
Yes.
Some people might say, oh, you know, I want to get divorced. I want to have, you know, I might want to make this easy and have mediation and make it simple. And sometimes that falls apart because the other person is starting to expose secrets from the family.
Right.
It could be a simple thing like, you know, in a rage one day you hit your child or something, right? And then they blow it up to mean like abusive, or
yes.
Right? So the idea that going into a divorce, people might think they want a certain kind of attorney, you know, to go after them, or something kinder or gentler, but then you really have to have you have to be very vulnerable and with your attorney in order for you to do this, which is really, you know, it's tough. I mean, you have to look inward and think all the things they could say about you in decades of marriage that could make you look differently than who you think you are, or who you know, to win, for them to win, right? They'll expose every secret you ever had.
I think I've said it on this series before that I often know more about people's lives than their best, closest, longest friends. I mean, I think a good attorney-client relationship in this area of the law is that where they are willing and comfortable to tell me the things. And it really is a no judgment zone. That's not my purpose. And that shouldn't be any attorney that I'm not here to judge you. I'm here to understand what has happened, where you're coming from, the decisions you've made, and, you know, what we can do to move forward, guided within the parameters of the law. And if we need to kind of go outside the parameters of the law to come up with a creative solution, then we do that, you know, where that fit is appropriate. I had a client recently who lied about a significant tax issue and lied directly to the spouse for weeks, and initially lied to me. And finally, I asked the question and I got a different answer. And I said, that's not what you said last time we spoke about this. And finally, they broke down. And I said, well, but why aren't you just telling the truth? And literally, and this is a very good person. I mean, this is the first issue of like this sort I've ever had. They couldn't explain to me, like they had no answer as to why they just, and it's not a huge issue. I mean, there's plenty of money. It's not, you know, it's not like they have to sell their home because of this tax issue. It's nothing that could be. I mean, lots of people have, you know, more dire circumstances. It wasn't anything like that. Just couldn't explain to me why they couldn't face the truth on this one issue. And you know, it's very interesting. And I do. I think that people need to understand that if you want to work through a problem, you know, you have to be honest. And if you couldn't do it in your marriage, you're certainly going to have to do it one way or the other, because, you know, the truth, things come out, like you just said, Tara, you know, things that you don't want the outside world to see, that you're not, you know, a certain way, or that you have flaws, because we all have flaws, God knows, and all of that. This is certainly a place where the warts are shown, whether intentionally or unintentionally, because sometimes it's not always intentional.
Yeah, it's a tough one. So Sandra, if people were looking to get in touch with you or knew someone that should come and want to just speak with you, how do they get to reach you?
Sure. So you can check out my website for some more information about all of these and other topics that we talk about on the Zoom series. It's www.asksandrafava.com. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn. Follow me on Twitter. New Jersey Divorce Law is my handle. Or I also have my Facebook page, Sandra Fava. Or you can email me at sfava@foxrothschild.com. Firm website, foxrothschild.com. All the information is up there. Lots of ways to find me, and we can talk more about something specific. If you, your friend, coworker, family member, anybody's struggling with some issues and they just need to get some advice or a second opinion or some guidance about what they need to do, certainly I'm happy to talk to them and help them in any way that I can.
Because life is complicated.
That's right. Life is messy.
Life is messy and complicated.
Yeah.
Anybody else? I just give you one more chance to ask any questions, because this is really done for you so that you can get more information. And what we want to do here is always give you information before you need to know it. And whether that's for you or for someone you know, I mean, the reality here is that half the population goes into a marriage, 100% go into a marriage thinking it's going to be forever, and more than half find out that it's time to uncouple. And depending on your life and depending on what happened, I think Sandra and I have talked many times, you deserve to live in a happy and healthy relationship, and you don't have to weather through the rest of your life in something that is really detrimental to you. And so as bad and sad and complicated as divorce is, for some people, that's the right answer so that they can live the best versions of themselves. And that's why we bring you a topic that isn't something that's all warm and fuzzy sometimes, because it's important to know this information. And we're really grateful for the almost, I think, 2.5 years that we've had Sandra in all different parts of our organization, live, in person, on Zoom, being able to share this valuable information. So anyone have any more questions?
Oh, and one last thing I wanted to tell everyone about is that we released a podcast, which is called Life After Love Gone Wrong. And I think that the podcast is, I know for sure it's on the Fox Rothschild website. It's on, you can find all of your other podcasts. So it's on the Apple Podcasts. I'm not very good with this stuff, so forgive me.
Well, you can find it. The easiest way for you to find it, if you either go to Sandra Fava, asksandrafava.com, and you'll see a link that says podcast. And we actually are helping make sure that's up to date for you guys. And also on the big website, on Believe, Inspire, Grow, we have our Happy Healthy series with our partner, Sandra Fava. And we have been updating both these programs and the podcast, as well as any special information. So that's multiple ways. And you can always reach out to Brittany or I to get you the direct link. That's what we're here for.
And the podcasts have a little bit more legal focus to them. So if, some of those are your questions, there's a bit more of that. And they're quick. They're not hour-long podcasts. I think the longest one's like 15 minutes so far. So we try to keep them good enough for a car ride worth of listening. So that's another resource.
Absolutely. So that's the program for today. Thank you all for coming and tuning in. If those of you who are going to the conference next week, which Big is co-sponsoring, it's the Force for Change Women's Conference on November 14th. There'll be hundreds of women there. There are still some tickets, and we still have a discounted rate for Big if those of you on this call are still interested. But you will get to see Sandra live there, since she'll be on one of the panels. And we look forward to seeing you there and seeing you next
so nervous about this conference. I don't even want to think about it. It's like, give me.
It's all good. It's all good. It's all great. And I've been on the inside track of what's happening. There's several celebrity surprises. There's some you know about. There's some that you're going to find out about.
All right. It's definitely going to be a great day for sure. Without even that surprise, it's amazing what bringing amazing women together will accomplish, for sure.
Absolutely. So we'll have tables there for Big. We'll have, Sandra will be there. There'll be a lot of our partners and everything else there. So it's not too late. It's next week, the 14th. And we'll see you guys all at upcoming events. And thank you, Sandra, for another enlightening experience on Zoom.
Thank you.
Have a great day, everybody.